Welcome to Ask Sean, where I explore all sorts of questions about life, relationships, and being human. I'm Sean Slevin, a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And if you have a question that you'd like to pose to me, you can go to www.asksean.org and you can submit that anonymously. So today's question has to do with boundaries and the ways that it's challenging for all of us to be able to have firm boundaries, have clear boundaries, but also feel like we can be ourselves and show up in the world in authentic ways. I think boundaries are one of the most fundamental kind of human skills and needs, and they can be really challenging. It's easy to not have enough boundaries, and also to kind of have boundaries that can be too rigid and don't allow us to have enough connection with others. So I think this question gets into some of the messiness of that. So I think this is going to be a good one. So I'm just gonna go ahead and read this. So this is someone's anonymous submission. I was told by a counselor several years ago that boundaries are unloving and harsh. At the time, I desperately needed to learn how to have healthy give-and-take relationships without enmeshment and codependency. I feel like my counselor's advice left me vulnerable to abuse. Today, I'm a person who draws strict boundaries in relationships when I sense that someone is needing me too much or attempting to manipulate my heart. This seems to result in people feeling confused and insecure in relationship with me. I want to act as nurturing as I feel on the inside without people imprinting on me and scripting me into a relationship role that's dysfunctional for us both. How can I practice balance between nurture and boundaries so I can bring my authentic self to relationships and protect myself in the process? So gosh, there's a lot here. I think the first thing I want to speak to is just this really really troubling and perplexing dynamic of this person's counselor telling them that boundaries are unloving and harsh. I really try hard to give people the benefit of the doubt. It's easy to just pass judgment, to be like, well, that person was a jerk and didn't know what they were talking about. But I wasn't there. I don't know what they were trying to communicate. I mean, I would like to think they were trying to be helpful somehow. They were trying to say something useful. It's admittedly hard to make sense of how those words could be helpful. Boundaries are so necessary to relationships. One way of thinking about it is boundaries aren't just about saying no. Boundaries are about having a sense of this is me and that is you, and I can know the difference. You kind of think about it boundaries is like having skin. Our bodies need skin. Otherwise, we're subject to so much more infection. If we didn't have skin and muscles, we'd just kind of be jellyfish or something, right? And jellyfish are cool and they have a place in the world, but we would be very different organisms if we didn't have sort of our physical boundaries, right? That define this is where I end, right? The ends of my beards, my beard hairs and whatnot, So it just feels really, it's really confusing. I guess one thing I can think of in terms of trying to give benefit of the doubt here is it does take skill to live out our boundaries well, so it could be that maybe this counselor was trying to speak to a way in which this individual was struggling to live out their boundaries in a kind way. If somebody asks me, hey, would you like to go to dinner? And my response is, back the F up. What the hell's wrong with you? How dare you ask that? Well, that says a lot about, something going on with me, potentially. Now, we don't have any context here. Has this person been screaming at my door saying go to dinner with me, well, that's different, right? But assuming that they're, you know, not being hostile, I need to be able to say, yeah, I don't feel like doing dinner tonight, but let's hang out another time, you know? So, if I'm having a really strong reaction and sort of, kind of enacting my boundaries in a really intense way, or even kind of an aggressive way, where it's like I'm not just holding my boundary, but I'm starting to kind of cross over someone else's boundary. That's a way in which, my trying to have boundaries can start to turn into something unloving, something harsh. But even there, the answer isn't to not have boundaries, right? The answer is to get really skillful in how to have my boundaries well, how to have them healthily. So I don't know what the heck was going on with this counselor and this counseling session or sessions where, if I could speak to the person who sent this in, I hope you get to see this video at some point. I don't know what was going on with why your counselor told you that. But I'm really sorry. I can totally understand how that advice, that counsel, would totally set you up for abuse. That would set you up to sort of second guess, where your gut might be saying, I don't feel good about something. I need to say no here, even though that's uncomfortable for someone else. I don't feel like I can sign up for this or do this in a good way. And so I should, I need to refrain. Even if it's something that someone really needs, like if I can't do it healthily, that's not going to be good for me to do. So I'm just, I am really sorry. I'm sorry for how it seems like that counselor really let you down and they kind of hurt you. So I'm sorry for how my profession failed you in that way. So I hope that you can take that in, that like my heart is hurting for you in this. Anytime that someone is trying to erode our boundaries, is trying to get us to not have any boundaries, like that's not a good thing. That's not okay. Do all of us need to grow in how to like live out our boundaries, with more kindness and with like more of a firm kind of gentleness, if you will? Like, absolutely. Like there are moments for all of us where it's really hard to like, sort of have our boundaries in a way that isn't like, just, being pissed at somebody, like, where we're getting really triggered. But again, the answer there isn't to get rid of boundaries. Like that doesn't solve anything. That is not the solution. So it feels like it's important here at the beginning to kind of just like acknowledge that something went crappy here, and somebody let you down, and it sounds like that had repercussions, and you got really hurt, and I'm really sorry for that. So, and then it sounds like, from what you've shared, I'm speaking to the person who wrote this in, that that you've kind of grown some, and that like you've had grown into a sense of like, actually, I really need my boundaries. I don't know what the heck was going on with this counselor, but my boundaries are important, and I need to have them. And I just want to affirm that, like, that's right. Like, good. I'm really, really glad that was not the end of your story. And this is the good thing for all of us. As long as we're still alive, our story's continuing. We're still learning, we're still growing. Like, no matter what kind of mistakes we've made, no matter what kind of bad advice we've been given, like, we can learn. We can seek out other helpers. So good for you on like sticking with it and sticking with your journey and sticking with yourself there. So I want to kind of turn to now some more of what this person has written. So today I'm a person who draws strict boundaries in relationships when I sense that someone is needing me too much or attempting to manipulate my heart. This seems to result in people feeling confused and insecure in relationship with me. I want to act as nurturing as I feel on the inside without people imprinting on me and scripting me into a relationship role that's dysfunctional for us both. How can I practice balance between nurture and boundaries so I can bring my authentic self to relationships and protect myself in the process? So, yeah. So I guess some initial reflections here. One, like, we can't stop people from imprinting on us, or projecting would be another word I use. Projecting, we all project. It's impossible not to project some. So projecting is when we're bringing sort of some part of our own history, into a dynamic, and so we're reading the other person, through the lens of our history, and to a degree where we're not seeing all of who they really are. We're seeing them as, some of who we think they are, who we want them to be. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a hard thing about life, is that, like, none of us actually see each other perfectly. We're all always, kind of looking through, kind of distorted glasses, which doesn't mean we can't have connection and can't have relationships, but, it does mean we have to, kind of have some humility of, that we don't actually know for certain, what all's going on with the other person. And so in terms of this question, this means, like, yeah, I mean, people are they're gonna project on us, and sometimes really severely, like they're gonna be where it's not like just, they're seeing, 70% of us, but like 30% is, sort of their imaginings of who they think we are, or who they want us to be or something. Sometimes, it's like, 80% is like projection, and like only 20% is like actually true to who we are. And so that doesn't feel good, that's yucky. It's unfortunate. But yeah, you can't stop somebody from that. And so I would advise against even thinking about trying to, like, prevent that, because that's not controllable. Each person has their own journey. What we are responsible for, as we interact with the world, is really trying to continue to know ourselves, and so to be increasingly clear with ourselves of, like, this is who I am and what I think I'm about. Also having some humility with that of, like, we're in process, like, we don't see ourselves totally accurately either. This is like, the other complication, right? Is like, I will know myself a little better tomorrow than I do today. A year from now, I'll know myself even more. So, we can't see ourselves totally, clearly either. So, but yeah, our responsibility is to, just to keep plodding along, trying to know ourselves, trying to find the aspects of ourselves that we've locked away, that we've abandoned or whatever, that we've, not known how to be in good relationship with. And so as we do that, then, that flows into, being able to grow in being clear with others of, like, this is what I'm about and this is what I'm not about. And so if someone's asking us to relate in a certain way, being able to say, yeah, that's not really how I want to, do relationship. Or I don't really want to do that, go have that, do that activity, or I'm not really into whatever, that genre of music even, I mean, sometimes we project about all sorts of random things. So, someone might be wanting to insist that, like, I thought this was your favorite band. And it's like, well, no, I don't think I've ever said that. Maybe I said that I liked a song of theirs, but actually I'm, more into, this music or something, and so we just gently correct them. And then, so here, I mean, we'll use this as a little example, right? So then say if someone, they're wanting to insist that we like a certain music that we don't, so this is like a sort of a silly example, but not totally impossible to happen. Like, this kind of thing does happen in life. Now, most interactions are going to be about other stuff, right? And be a bit more complicated, but it can be helpful to use something simple here to start. So we just be firm and just keep reminding them, like, no, remember we talked about this. Like, that's not actually, that's not my favorite band. I've told you that, and if they say, well, no, yes, it is. Then it's like, well, I'm telling you my own internal experience of myself is that that's not my favorite band. And it doesn't feel good when you keep trying to tell me that you know better what's going on inside of me than I do. Like, that's not okay. You don't have the right to, like, declare that. Even if later I change my mind or decide that, oh, actually, such and such is my favorite band, that's my prerogative. Like, you don't get to declare that. Even if you're somehow intuiting something about me that maybe I don't yet see, you don't have the right to push on that. If we're close enough, close enough friends, you could maybe, gently offer like, hey, it kind of feels like, you're more into blah, blah, blah. And I can decide if I want to take that in or not. But if you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, that's not okay. And if you keep doing that, I'm going to need to leave the interaction. That would be one, one option. Or, we could choose to, change the subject, or any number of things. But so this kind of illustrates how like we're trying to be firm and clear and kind, and we're trying to also offer a path forward, right? This is another principle about boundaries that sometimes gets missed. Like boundaries, the goal of boundaries is always like, how can we preserve the relationship? Not preserve the relationship at any cost, right? Like that's not having boundaries at all. It's like, I will just be whatever you want me to be. Do you want me to like that band? Sure, that's now my favorite band. So that's its own problem. That's maybe a different video. But yeah, I mean, it's like, the goal of being able to have part of the goal of being able to know this is me and that is you is that, okay, then because we know this is me and that's you, now we can like explore where can we connect, where can we meet as two different individuals, who have differences and yet are going to have so much in common, because the reality is we all have a lot more in common than we think. But can we join around those commonalities in a way that gives space for and even celebrates the ways that we're different? And so that's where, like in my little example, being able to say, hey, I've told you several times, like that doesn't feel good, and you keep the experience I'm having of you. Maybe this isn't what you're intending. Maybe this isn't even what's going on with you. But the way that it's landing with me, it feels like you're pushing, and that doesn't feel good. And so I really would need you to do something different there, because otherwise, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to do something different. And so the goal here, right, just to be clear, that doing something different, it's not about punishing, right? It's not about trying to force something, because, well, okay, now I'm being coercive, right? I think I talked about this some in the video about, needs and needs not being met. So it's not about those kinds of things. It's really about, I can't control what the other person's doing. If they're going to keep pushing, well, that is their prerogative. It feels yucky to me. I don't understand what's going on. It seems like a jerky thing, but I don't know what's happening inside of them or what they're intending. But it's certainly not landing well with me. And I'm taking responsibility for my part, which is letting them know this doesn't feel good. When you do X, Y, Z, especially repeatedly, especially after I've tried to communicate before that it doesn't feel good. This is how that lands with me, and it makes me want to pull away, or it makes me want to not hang out, or it makes me want to end the conversation, or change the subject, or whatever that may be. And so, and so then so implicit in that, but also what's good to make explicit is like, look, I'd love to keep hanging out, but I really need us to talk about something else. If you're going to keep pushing on that topic that I've said I don't want to talk about right now, then I am going to have to leave. But like we can talk about, movies instead of bands, or something, so I would love, again, that's where it's like creating opportunity for connection. And even in the saying like, hey, when you do this, it doesn't feel good, and thus that makes me want to, step away or and somehow do something different. Implicit in that is that, like, if you stop doing that, I will come back, we can then have we can have connection. And so again, it's not about punishment. It's not about, trying to force something. I mean, interestingly, like living out healthy boundaries is actually very respectful of the other person. It's saying, look, you get to be you, but I get to be me, and I don't want to continue in what's happening here. Like it's not working for me. And even if later I realize like, oh, that was, I wasn't terribly healthy in that, and it would have been, I needed to like learn to work through something so that I can hang in there. That's my business. like this isn't, none of us is perfectly healthy. Like we're all gonna like know things later that we don't know now about ourselves and that we might do different. So it's like, So, nobody gets to like claim the high ground here and be like, well, you should da 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 da. Like, because the thing is, we all have to work with where we're at right now. And so if in this moment, I don't feel good about this and I don't have an internal sense of how I can continue to stay in this in a healthy way, right? So I'm not able to connect with like, oh, I can see where this is like, I need to stretch myself in a healthy way here, which then I'm not violating any kind of boundary with myself. I'm trying to help myself grow. So if I can't connect with that, if it's just like, no, this just feels bad and my insides are telling me I need to step back, then I need to listen to that. Now, again, that doesn't mean that there isn't things to examine there. Like if I'm continuing to have relational interactions, if I'm getting a lot of feedback from people of like, hey, it's hard to be in relationship with you because of how you, kind of all the boundaries you have. Well, it doesn't mean we abandon our boundaries, but it can be worthwhile to do some exploring of like, okay, so, are some of these boundaries, is how I'm, living out some of these boundaries, is some of that coming, from a place where there's still a lot of wounding, where like I've been really hurt, and so my boundary is like really, really intensely, almost like pushing back, so a bit of a slap to the other person's face, metaphorically kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, my boundaries do need to be firm, but like if I'm having a lot of intensity come up, then that's a clue to me that I should do some work with that. The point of that isn't like to make other people more comfortable. The point of that is there's parts of me that need healing. Like, I need to listen to that. That's my responsibility, right? And so this is where, other people's feedback, even if they're coming from an unhealthy place, other people's feedback might be shining a light on places, that I could work on. So again, it's not about abandoning boundaries or eroding boundaries, but examining, what, like how do my boundaries, need to evolve as I grow and heal as a person? It's like, I think of like a sunburn analogy. When my skin is really raw because I've been sunburned, there might be certain kinds of fabric that I need a boundary with, because it's like, it's just, things are just too sensitive right now. I don't mean like, oh, too sensitive. I mean, it's just the sensitivity is really high and it's not workable for me to wear maybe certain fabrics or something. Or certain clothes because my skin is just so on fire. As it heals, right, then I can start to re-engage. I still have my boundary, right? I'm not getting rid of my skin, so I still have my boundary, but it can be a little bit more flexible, and it's like, well, okay, I can reapproach, that wool sweater that I got in Ireland or something, right? Like that's super scratchy. And so again, boundaries, it's about being firm enough, that we're clear about what I am okay with and not okay with, and what is me and what is not me. But also they need to be flexible enough that we can, there can be an exchange of relational connectional energy, right? So yeah. So I think I'm pausing because I feel like there's a ton here yet that we could unpack, but I'm trying to decide if it makes sense to continue to do in this video. I guess let me pull up the letter again. Yeah, I guess the other thing, so, this person who wrote in, they're talking about having the boundaries, so like draw strict boundaries when I sense that someone is needing me too much or attempting to manipulate my heart. This seems to result in people feeling confused and insecure in relationship with me. So I think one of the things that I would say there is that's, potentially some work to do is on being clearer. Really trying to be specific and in the moment about like, hey, this is why I'm doing something different. I'm having an experience of you that feels this way. I don't know what's actually going on inside of you. I don't know if you're trying to manipulate me or not, or if you're needing me too much, but that's what's being evoked in me, and that doesn't feel good. And so for, kind of where I'm at in my journey, I need to, pull back a bit, or I'm not going to hang out, today. but I'll see you in a couple days, or whatever. Um, and how someone responds to that will tell you a lot. If they get really angry, and are really pushy, then certainly that increases the potential that, like, kind of how you're reading things is more on target, right? But that's not really the goal. The point isn't to, like, feel like we know for certain what's going on inside of other people, because we can't ever be totally certain. But it's certainly, it doesn't, it's if someone responds poorly to our trying to clarify, like, this is why I need to, like, say no here, then that just gives more opportunities to practice our boundary setting. It's like, hey, and what's happening right now, this is kind of an example of what I'm talking about. Like I've told you, I'm having a particular experience, and I feel like you're really kind of jumping all over me. I'm not trying to attack you. I'm not even trying to say that I know you're doing anything wrong, because I don't know. You might be, everything you're doing might be fine. I'm just telling you how it's landing with me, the experience that I'm having. And I really need that to matter. I need you to care about that. And also not try to, like, make it into something bad, like, I'm at where I'm at. Like, let me have my feelings and my experience. I'm trying to let you have yours. So I think that's more the kind of conversation that we want to work towards being able to have. Now, that may be somewhere where the struggle is for you being the person. I'm speaking now to the person who wrote this in. You might be struggling with how uncomfortable it is to be that direct, or being able to be that direct without being, like, really, really angry. Anger in itself is not bad. It's really hard to be in healthy relationship with our anger, I find. So a lot of times we tend to go to anger because as a way of not feeling pain, and that's not good. So yeah, yes, I think there's some things. I don't know. There's things. Yeah, this is where I wish we could have, like, a back and forth. But yeah, I guess I would also wonder about, there might be some discomfort for you, again, speaking to the person who wrote this in, with, like, if someone is, like, kind of expressing that they're needing you, and you're like, I can't be there for you in that way, that might be hitting something in you, where it's like, oh, am I not a caring person? Am I not a nurturing person? It sort of challenges some self-image stuff. And so I think that, again, shines a helpful light on something. Get curious about, like, okay, what is it that makes it so hard for me? What's painful about that? And that's probably going to get into, some ways that, you've been hurt. You don't want anyone else to feel hurt. I know for myself, right? Like, I know the pain of rejection and abandonment and abuse. And so I don't want anyone to feel that. And so I have my own patterns, right, of, like, my own tendencies to over accommodate, kind of historically in my life, because I wasn't comfortable with, I wasn't able to handle the discomfort of, like, ooh, somebody might, they might feel, like, hurt by my saying, yeah, I know you want me to be there in that moment, but I can't. I can't in a good way. And whether that's a deficiency in me or not, I can't show up in a good way, and so I need to say no there. So I've had to do my own work of engaging that original pain, the places where I have felt, rejected or abandoned or, abused, and had experiences of that, and continuing to be with those hurting parts of me, such that, like, my ability to be present to sort of the hint of the threat of that pain in another isn't so distressing, that I can be clear and be firm, care about someone, but also not be taking responsibility for their emotional state. To be able to let them even be triggered and be really upset and maybe misunderstand me, and think that, like, oh, I'm so mean and because I won't show up in this particular way, and which is hard. That's really freaking hard. But it's also, if I can't show up in a healthy way, that's also the best thing I can do, like, because it's not going to be good in the long run. If I'm not showing up in a healthy way, then like whatever it is happening there, even though it might scratch an itch for the other person in the near term, it's like we're not actually doing a healthy thing. Not saying that it's all unhealthy, but it's also not totally good. So yeah, so I guess I would wonder about that, being in the mix here too, that there's more pain, kind of in your own history that you've got to be doing some work with. Because as you work through that, it gets easier. Still never totally comfortable, but it gets easier to say to someone like, "Hey, I know it seems to me like you're really wanting me to be there for you in this certain way, and that's not really the kind of relationship that I'm comfortable having with you. If we can be, whatever, friends in this certain way, in this category, or within these limits, then I would love to be. But if you're really needing something that's over here, this whatever I'm, what is other box or whatever, this other range, then yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that for you. And I know that's disappointing, but that's just where I'm at. And we can be able to do that without feeling like ashamed or like we're a horrible person or whatever. And like I said, earlier, still with the humility that like I might feel different, 6 months from now. I might grow and heal some and be like, oh, actually, I've got a little more flexibility now. But that doesn't mean I was bad or wrong or whatever for having the boundary I had before. Like we're all where we're at. Like, like even if we somehow could have a map of like, oh, this is what it's going to look like for me when I'm like so much more healthy and all the things I'll be capable of. Like, if I can't do that now, it doesn't help me to be like, well, shame on me for like not doing that because I should be doing that because that's what healthier looks like. It's like, well, if I'm trying to do the best I can, if I'm plodding along, dealing with my stuff, I'm not ignoring my junk, I'm continuing to work on it, then it's like, well, I'll get there as soon as I can, and of course the reality is none of us have an exact map of like, this is what it's going to look like to be me, 6 months from now or a year from now, and what I'll be capable of. And so, we just, we have to trust our process. So yeah, I think there's lots more that could be said here, but I think I'll kind of pause with that. Yeah, and for all of you that are tuning in, all who you may be resonating with some pieces of this. I hope that you can let those sink in. And yeah, maybe some of you, this sparks some kind of some follow-up questions, where you're like, okay, but what about such and such a scenario? And if so, I would love to hear that. You can go to www.asksean.org, and it's all anonymous. Feel free to, if you want to include a link to this video, if there's something in particular about this video that you're wanting to reference, of like, okay, so in this video you said blah, 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 at such and such a point in the video, can you say more about that in reference to, such and such a scenario that, I'm going through. Yeah, and I'd be happy to have a look at that. So, alrighty. Well, until next time, peace be with you.